African NCA Community of Practice webinar series for this year, 2021, which has a theme of towards a national plan for advancing environmental economic accounting. The Community of Practice family, together with the World Bank, would like to start by thanking our strong partners and able partners, the UN Statistics Division and Conservation International. Thank you, Rosemary and Marco, for preparing this important webinar and the wonderful work you're doing for the community of practice. It's also important to note that countries across Africa are at different stages of implementing NCA at national level. Some have made good progress, others are in the middle of it all, and others are starting, yet others are yet to maybe start natural capital accounting work within their respective countries. So this webinar is very important and timely. And I think it's very important to mention that it will help countries across Africa to understand the processes, the methodology, and the approaches to implement NCA using the SIA framework to consistently progress faster in implementing this work in their respective countries. Today, the experts from UNSD and Conservation International and countries' focal point persons will take us through steps such as scoping, assessment of readiness, tools available to implement NCA, and the capacity of countries that are seeking to embark on natural capital accounting approaches that are consistent with the system of environmental economic accounting. So, dear members, you have expressed interest to learn from the best from African countries and across the globe within the spheres of methodological approaches and phases of implementing NCA through SIA framework. We are pleased today that this is happening, and this is a good opportunity for us to have practical knowledge and information on how to do the actual work within our respective countries across Africa. We highly encourage members to share widely the knowledge to be shared today with country institutions that you're representing. We understand that some members joined the community of practice as individual members. However, it is recommended that they find a way back home to share widely with all countries, stakeholders, government, private sector, civil society organizations, and the academia, who may also join the community of practice from you members who are present today. We are committed to welcome more members to join the community of practice so that we can grow together. This is the only sure way for the community of practice to grow and practically influence national development and policy decision-making within the spheres of natural capital accounting. We thank you all for joining and getting interested in this important webinar, which is focusing on National Plan for Advancing Environmental Economic Accounting. I'm sure that the outcomes of this discussion will advance our NCA work across Africa. I wish you all a productive webinar and discussion. And with that, allow me to welcome Mr. Ludi, who is going to be the chair of this webinar, to take us through the agenda and to welcome the panelists and experts who will be presenting to us today. Thank you. Over to you, Rudy.
Thanks, Peter, for that great introduction. For those of you who've not either heard me or seen me before, put my video on to let you see and experience a little bit while I'm talking who I am. I've been leading the Gaborone Declaration for Sustainability in Africa for the last 5 years. And we are very pleased that we have two member countries joining us today in a panel. But before that, and according to the program, which I hope you have in front of you, we will have a keynote introduction and presentation by Rosemary Portela. She's a colleague of mine at Conservation International. She used to be based at headquarters in the United States. Is currently working out of the Far East, and it's already very late for her. So we should get on with the business, I guess. As I run through the program, I will introduce the people in a little bit more detail. But as you may have seen, after Rosemary's presentation, we have a short quiz or something that Marco from the UN Stats Department will lead. After which we go into the panel discussion. And as I mentioned, we've got Botswana, we've got Edwin in your program is not available, but he's been replaced by Batusi. She is an immediate colleague of Edwin and works with him in the office. Then we have Christine and Raphael. Christine is from Kenya, Stats, and Raphael is from Global Legislators for Environment program. So without further ado, let's do that and start. Allow me to present the presenters a bit later. Rosemary will take it away. She's been working with National Capital Accounting for a long time, specializes in ecosystems accounting, has also done quite a bit of work with the business side of National Capital Accounting and the capital protocols. So we look forward to hearing from you, Rosemary, and we'll take it from there. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ruud. Can you guys hear me just fine?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much for the opportunity to present at this community of practice. I'm really quite pleased and honored to be here tonight. Elsa, can we have our slides, please? Thank you. So I will be talking, the next slide, please. I will provide a brief overview on a national plan to build to the NCA implementation, but I will start talking about the global implementation, the current status, the countries that are currently implementing NCA accounts, and then I'll be talking about a multi-phase approach for implementation, including with a national plan and the national assessment that provide the basis for the implementation of the national plan. I'll be talking a little bit about the scoping and some of the diagnostic templates for that assessment, and wrap it up with some of the tools that are available to the implementation of the assessment, the plan, as well as to the implementation of environmental economic accounts. Next. I would just start by saying that we are at a critical juncture for environmental economic accounting. The climate crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic are showing us the urgency to move from an economic model that ignores nature and that makes us vulnerable to the climate change impact and zoonosis diseases as we are experiencing. The systematic assessing the contribution of nature to the economy, as well as the impact of the economy on nature, is now more important than ever. And that's what we propose with the system of environmental economic accounting. As of now, the latest assessments, please, the previous slides still, over 90 countries have implemented the system, some of the accounts, with many more interested in the latest assessment. Numerous countries expressed interest in implementing the accounts to address some specific policies, but most importantly, some of the reporting associated with the multilateral environmental agreements, such as the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. So there is tremendous momentum, and we expect that even more so will with the upcoming adoption of the ecosystem accounting as a statistical standards expected to be taking place in March. So it's a very exciting moment, and we see tremendous potential for scaling up. Next. So to respond to the demand from many countries to how to start the process, a implementation guide was developed by the UNSG and adopted by the UN Statistical Commission that provides a modular and flexible approach for the implementation of accounts. It basically starts with that national assessment, which many of us call scoping, that determines the readiness of the countries, provides the context, that then informs the national plan, that provides what some of us call roadmap for the long-term implementation of the accounts. Subsequent phases focus on some of the implementation of some of those priority accounts as informed by the national assessment and the national plan, and the completion of those on a pilot basis, and which are, to be improved upon as we learn by doing. And continuous work on data quality assessment and the use of the NCA accounts generated information for many of decision making and development planning. So next. So this national assessment is essentially a process, a planning process that gathers all the information associated with some of the institutional arrangements, the data that are available, some of the constraints and opportunities associated that are need to be addressed for the implementation of the accounts. So that set of information, the scoping of which provides the basis for the development of this national plan, which in a nutshell sets the stage for the implementation of those priority accounts. So the national assessment helps the implementation, the written up of this national plan. Next. So no one person can do it by themselves. It's a relatively comprehensive kind of analysis, and also no one person can develop a national plan either. So what we recommend is for a core group to be established, composed of individuals, most of them from the government, that have familiarity with sustainability issues, policies, accounts, statistics. And it's really quite important that there is mandate for that to take place, and with a sponsor, a senior representative that we characterize as the sponsor, that often comes from a central finance or planning or policy agents that has the role of convening across many governmental agencies and really have the power, in some cases the funding, to make this happen. So the sponsor really has a very leading, critically important role here of convening and providing the mandate for that. The producer tend to be those that are associated with the production of national statistics or generation of information. Also really quite important here. So between, we really need to ensure that both sponsors and producers work collaboratively together with many other agencies in the government. And the producers tend to come from the statistical agents, but we often see a combination of statistical agents, the environmental agencies, and the such. I'd say that it's very important to make sure that as we go about that, especially for, as for the assessment, but certainly for the national plan, that we bring in the users of the accounts, those that we really work on a daily basis with, the information derived from the accounts to inform several processes, and sometimes directly and sometimes through other analytical uses. Next. So what does a national assessment look like? It's composed of a number of things, a number of parts, but we synthesize them as 7 kind of basic elements that are important to be carefully assessed. From the institutional arrangement, the stakeholders, the governmental agencies, the academia, and those non-governmental organizations that ought to be part of this process, to the policy priorities and their respective targets and indicators that really will inform the development of the priority accounts. The availability of data is really critically important, and sometimes this data are available either on the statistical agents, but throughout numerous governmental agencies. So institutional arrangements that allow for data sharing and collaboration is also very important. Other accounts, other studies, some of the countries have done TEEB assessments, some have done some valuation analysis. All of this is important. Constraints need to be carefully documented. Some of those are associated with limited capacity for the development of the accounts, which implies the need of training, of awareness raising, and the opportunities associated, for example, with very important needs that the countries may have. At the end of it, it all allows for the recommendations of priority accounts and the next steps. Next. So all of those elements, I'm going to highlight the policy priorities because the policy priorities are perhaps amongst them all the one that really demonstrates the importance and generates buy-in for the implementation of the accounts. Different policies will definitely require different types of accounts. So their careful assessment vis-a-vis a national development plan or specific areas such as biodiversity conservation or resource allocation or risks associated with climate mitigation or adaptation. All of these will require different types of accounts, as I said before. For example, if we want to know about the state of the environment and approaches to reduce the impacts, we definitely will have ecosystem accounts focusing, for example, on extent accounts and condition accounts. If we are concerned about supply and demand or over extraction of some resources, then we would look into ecosystem services accounts with a focus, for example, on timber, on fisheries, on water. So policies that we want to inform will determine the priority accounts to be developed. Next. Conservation International has developed a check-in / template to help countries to go through that scoping to this assessment process with a series of issues that are highlighted here on the left, which are very much aligned with what CA proposes on the implementation plan. But with the added benefit that many of those are in the format of questions or with following a tabular approach that allows for ranking of the importance of many things. For example, ranking climate change as opposed to, for example, biodiversity or any other policies, either subnational or the national level. So this template checklist can be made available, and it really helps because it asks some of those critically important questions that provides facilitates the development of the national assessment. Next. There other tools that are available. One of the tools that are really quite important is the diagnostic tool that is in the implementation guidelines. There are certainly numerous manuals. Many of those are available in the Knowledge Center on the UN Statistic Division website. There's also opportunities for regional and sub-regional workshops, such webinars like we are doing here, or even in-country technical assistance upon request. So many of those are available, and we can't stress enough the importance of sharing experiences. South-South, for example, where countries such as the ones that are coming today in the panel will explain, the process they went to, the lessons learned, the findings, the pitfalls, for example, to be avoided. Next. To synthesize, this is intended to only provide a background and context. I'm sure we'll talk more in more concrete terms as the countries come in, but it's important to stress that the assessment is really a strategic participatory planning that will look into the enabling conditions and priorities that will inform the development of the national plans. Those plans really should document the priorities, allow for testing, allow for some of the limitations like capacity to be addressed, ensure that resources are available for the implementation, and the communication needs are carefully considered, and the national statistical offices are empowered and have the means to work with many others towards an ongoing compilation of accounts from pilots to a more developed and even more encompassing set of accounts. I will stop now, and I'd like to again thank you very much. I hope that's informative, and again, don't hesitate to look for those materials that are available, or as in this webinar, ask specific questions. I'll be available to answer, but I'll hand it over to Ruud for the next steps in our agenda. Thank you so much again.
Thanks, Rosemary. That's great. That was a wonderful overview, and I'm sure some of us can directly relate to some of the issues that you've highlighted. I can particularly relate to the priority issues, and I will share a story a little bit later. But before I do that, and before I call on the panel, I'd like to call on Marco, who is a statistician, to run us through an audience quiz. Marco, I'm sure as a statistician, you love doing these things. So I will not explain any further, and hand over to you, and you'll tell us what you want us to do. Thanks.
Hi, Ruud. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Yes, it's a very simple quiz. It is so the idea here was only to have this webinar a little bit more interactive. We wanted to find a little bit more about you first. In this first round, we'll ask you a couple of questions, a little bit more on where you come from and what are the current activities. And then there will be a second round after the panel. So maybe we can ask you a little bit something on the actual content of the discussion that happened. So it's really just to make it a little bit more interactive, a little bit more fun. Nothing scientific. I might be a statistician, yes, but I think this quiz is very, very unscientific, very, hopefully a bit of fun. So I'll ask Elsa if she could display, please, the first two questions, and then I'll read them out. I hope they'll appear on your screen soon. Hopefully this works. We're trying it the first time. Yes. Okay. So so we have two questions in this first round. So the first question is, what are your country's activities related to scoping or national plan development so far? So please select one choice. You know, you might not be doing anything yet. You might be planning activities in the future. You might be in the process of scoping or developing a national plan, or you've already developed a national plan. So, so if you could select one of the options and click submit as the first question. And then let's move to the second question. My questions disappeared. Okay. And then the second question. Elsa, do you mind displaying the second question, maybe?
Sure. I'm going to end this first one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Is it one by one? Okay, good.
It's one by one, right? So
Perfect.
I can share the results, but
okay, let's see the results.
Here we go.
All right. Okay. So out of the people that responded, I can see that the majority, 45%, have already developed the national plan. So that's good. So maybe this webinar is a little bit trying to show you more towards trying to maybe we can at the end ask people to from which countries they're on the call, that to put in the chat, you know, to know who has developed this national plan. So maybe we can connect those people to people that are interested in developing national plan. And there's 30% of you that are in the process of developing plan, which is great. So hopefully you'll get some new ideas on how to develop this national plan going forward. So only 21 and 6%, so only quarter of you that have not done anything or just planning the activities in the future. So that was question number one. Let's move to question number two.
Here it goes.
Perfect. So the question number two is just to understand where do participants in this webinar coming from? So what type of agency or organization are you from? Please select either you're from a national government, the statistical office, either you're from a government Ministry of Environment or related, whatever the name might be in your country. Whether you're in the national government Ministry of Planning or other sort of finance or central bank, or whether you're from other parts of the national government. Regional international organization is also an option, or NGOs are also an option, or anything else. So if you may, please select a choice for one of these options. I'll give you a couple of seconds. Please do select only one. I do believe that this quiz might be allowing you to select more than one, but I think if you select only one would be great. So National Government, Statistical Office, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Planning, Finance, or Central Bank, other parts of the government, regional international organizations, or NGOs. Well, other is also an option. Hopefully everyone managed to select their option. Elsa, please display the results. Great, thank you. So we have more of an even spread, and see that there's relatively similar number of people from, well, the largest number of people from regional international organizations. There's from the national government, most people are from ministries of environment, but not too lagging behind from statistical offices. So that's good. So we have both policy people, people involved in policy, and also people involved in the statistics, the production of the accounts. That's great, because these two parts are definitely the most important in order to take forward the implementation of NCA. We also have quite a bit of people from NGOs and other, so that's quite an interesting spread. Well, thank you for this part of the quiz. We can move on, and I'll hand back to Ruth. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Marco, and thanks also for the participants' interesting answers. We're keeping a tab on your chat, so keep on answer and put more elements of what you're particularly interested in the chat box. Later on, after the panel discussion, we'll have some time to do a Q&A. In the meantime, though, we do try and answer your questions as and when they come in. I'd like to just introduce the panel, but before I do that, I'll just try and maybe I'll just take the prerogative of the chair and give you an example of Botswana that I was personally involved in. And it also relates to the questions that were asked by Jacqueline and Jeffrey, and to some extent Eugene in the chat box. And it relates to how do you get policy support. Now, most of you will know that Botswana was one of the countries that were covered by the WAVES program, and Sophia is here if you have any further questions on the World Bank WAVES program. And in making the case for national capital accounting in Botswana, we, at the time I was working with the UN, but we had the opportunity to brief the Botswana Economic Advisory Council, which at the time was chaired by President Khama, and we put up a case for national capital accounting. And in doing so, we showed a very important slide. And that slide showed that 50% of the water in Botswana was being used by the agricultural sector, so crop farming as well as livestock. And a number of members in the Economic Advisory Council, and they were typically economists, highly doubted that particular figure. Admittedly, at the time, the figure was about 5 to 10 years old, based on previous work that was done by Glenn Marie Lang, who subsequently ran the WAVES program at the global level. And the president looked at us and said, what's underlying this figure? So we tried to explain, and economists sort of went against us and said, no, you're wrong, this can't be right. And the president at the time says, okay, listen, I'll give you half a year to start national capital accounting in Botswana together with the World Bank, and the World Bank officer was there with us. And at the next meeting of the Business and Economic Advisory Council, you give us some updated figures. Because if we have doubting Thomases in the council at such a high level, then we need to make sure that we, establish the right political framework and the buy-in for this important type of work that you're proposing to do. Long and short of it is, we did, together with the World Bank, and the figures came out, tentative figures came out about half a year later, because actual doing the full monetary accounts takes a little bit more time, but these were the so-called flow accounts, stocks and flows. And it showed exactly the same percentage, one or 2 percentage points, I think even more than the previous figure. And as a result of that, not only had we convinced the president of the country, but also the Minister of Finance, who was part of that committee, and some other external as well as advisory advisors from Botswana. And it really made a difference. And it's just a small story. It's anecdotal, but I just want to give it to you and support Rosemary's observation that if you can start with a clear account that is prioritized in an area, and as a follow-up to this particular example that I just gave, is that and the questions that came in through the chat box was that, well, in what way did these figures then ultimately lead to policy decisions or otherwise? And not only was that information so important that the Department of Water Affairs set up their own accounts, which they are now running, I think, for the 5th or 6th year running. These accounts also informed water tariffs in the country. They started a whole discussion about to what extent is water really a free good? Should we start paying for it? How does it affect our foreign direct investment opportunities that we offer in Botswana? Do we want to attract industries that use a lot of water, and yet it's a fairly scarce resource in Botswana, et cetera, et cetera. So it does give you a bit of a background as to what can be done with these type of accounts. So that's just to start it off. Just to introduce the panel, if you allow me. We've got no longer Edwin, unfortunately, but Batusi Serobai is a close a colleague of Edwin in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development in Botswana, and they run a unit which coordinates all the work that the Botswana government does in natural capital accounting. And Batusi will give some more information, I think, a bit later on. We've got Christine Magu or Mahu. We would say Mahu in Botswana, but it's probably Magu. Apologies, Christine, if that's not the right way to pronounce your surname, but she's with the Kenya Bureau of Statistics. She's the focal point for the UNSD in Kenya, and she'll be sharing with us some of the Kenyan examples. And we've got Rafael Abar, and he's with GLOBE, like I mentioned earlier, the Global Legislators for Environment organization. I think Rafael is still based out of Spain, Madrid, at the moment. And they work in the DRC, in Nigeria, and Senegal. And through GLOBE, Senegal has actually been one of the more recent member states of the GDSA. So we hope that Rafael can bring in some expertise from his work with GLOBE. To kickstart it, and to also ask the panelists to share a few observations from their countries, I'd like to sort of start with looking at securing that political support. The example I gave, but also what came through Rosemary's observations on where do you start and how do you plan for national capital accounting. And I'd like to suggest that we go ladies first. We've got two ladies. Let me start with Kenya. I'll be biased to start with Botswana, so I'll go for Kenya. Christine, can you share some of your experiences with your Bureau of Statistics, the work that you do on national capital accounting, and how you dealt with that matter of getting the Kenyan government to really buy into national capital accounting at that important policy level. Christine?
Okay, Ruud, and it's Magu, you're right. So in Kenya, this process started in 2016. I don't know if you can see me. This is blank here. So anyhow, the process started.
Bandwidth is a bit low. Can you speak up a little bit? You're sounding very faint to me.
Okay. I hope it's better now.
Yeah.
So the process in Kenya, okay. The process in Kenya started back in 2017, where we had a workshop with the UNSC, and we were trying to come up with a national plan to try and prioritize the accounts that we wanted to start with in Kenya. And how we did that is we came up with a 3-tier committee. We had a high-level committee where we tried to rope in the director generals of the various agencies and the principal secretaries. That is the topmost job in the ministries. So we brought those ones in to provide policy guidance, and we explained to them what it is that we wanted to do. And so with support at that level, it was a bit easy now to go to the technical group to get representation from each of those institutions, all the relevant ministries and departments. We came together and had a national workshop in May. And there is when now we were able to look at what data do we have, what accounts are possible for Kenya, and we prioritized and came up with 3 accounts to be produced in the next 4 years. This was the energy, water, and forest accounts. And back to the political support question, how we get political support here is, politicians and legislators and policymakers in general, they want actual figures. They want to know what is the benefit, what is the outcome of this. So what we did is once we came up with the energy accounts, we tried and created a snapshot. For example, for the situation in Kenya, and figures, and if you have snapshot figures, then
Christine, you're breaking up a little bit. If you don't mind, could you, unless you've already done so, if you turn off your video, then maybe the bandwidth will allow us to hear you a bit clearer. Thanks.
Okay. Did you get there a bit you didn't get?
Got a fair bit of what you were saying. We just lost you the last sort of 30 seconds. Did you hear me, Christine? Are you still with us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. You're back.
Okay, great. So I was just saying that if you prioritize the right accounts and you present them, in a snapshot way without giving too many details, just give what is the outcome of this account. And if it is very relevant for your government, then it is possible to get buy-in from policymakers. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Christine. That last point you just made is just so important. I remember discussing national capital accounting at a forum in The Hague a few years ago, and the minister of Costa Rica was there. And he said, if you give us, and he was obviously, already quite aware, because Costa Rica has done extremely well with their natural resources and natural capital, as we know, and they've also done very, very good work with national capital accounting through their central bank, which goes to show what Christine just said. In Kenya, it's the National Bureau for Statistics. In Costa Rica, it's the National Bank. In other countries, it's the Ministry of Environment. In some other country, it's a National Planning Commission or a Ministry of Finance. So it really is, it depends on where we are in the countries. But to come back to your point, Christine, about, make it look relatively simple, present the outcomes in a very clear, overseeable way, use infographics. And this is what the Minister of Costa Rica said to us. He says, if I cannot read and understand what it is that you're saying with your national capital accounts, either through graphs or, maps or otherwise very simple economic indicators or metrics. If I cannot read it between my office and the way home, you will have lost me. I need to have something that I can immediately talk to. And more importantly, if I can understand, I need to extend it to the level where I can show it to my colleagues. because they may have less appreciation of natural capital than I have as a Minister of Environment. So it's very important, and I want to strongly support your point to really get that buy-in by starting in a very simple way. And I think the anecdotal information from Botswana really pointed in the same direction. Get started. Don't think that you're going to be perfect with your account. Just get started. Very, very important. And even your initial a map showing your ecosystems or your hotspot biodiversity areas is a first step towards natural capital accounting. Let's not think that only very important and complicated graphs, denote what it is to do natural capital accounting. That's down the line. Ultimately, yes, we want all these figures to be incorporated into our national system of accounts and to have very important environmental decisions being made on the basis of the value of ecosystems and the way we relate to that. But we got to start somewhere, and it's very important to start with whatever is important for a country and take it from there. But Tusi, I hope you're with us, and I just wanted to ask you, within the context of Botswana and the way we started, could you also give us a bit of an idea, who you thought in Botswana were the most important stakeholders, or what sort of institutional arrangements you've made? And I know you're coordinating this at the national level. Maybe give us an idea about how many departments at the moment are actually involved with natural capital accounting, and how that works out, and how that information, if we have it, has been utilized in Botswana in the various ways that we do national capital accounts. Batusi, are you with us?
Hello, Ruth. Can you hear me?
Yeah, very loud and clear. Welcome, my dear.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. As Ruth indicated earlier, my name is Batusi Sorobai. I work at the Ministry of Finance, responsible for coordinating the implementation of natural capital accounting in Botswana. Well, we started the natural capital accounting process in 2012. We started with the water accounts, and other accounts that were prioritized include the energy accounts, the mineral accounts, and the compilation of the macroeconomic indicators for sustainable development. Our institutional structure is a little bit different from other countries. In our case, the mineral accounts are developed by the Botswana Geoscience Institute, and the water accounts are developed by the Department of Water and Sanitation Services. And the energy accounts, they are developed by the Department of Energy, and macroeconomic indicators, they are developed by the Ministry of Finance. On annual basis, we update these accounts. We produce technical reports, and we also produce policy briefs, which summarizes main points from the technical reports. And we also have the steering committee, which includes members from different departments, and they are responsible for the overall, or for overseeing the overall implementation of natural capital accounting in Botswana. And we also have the technical working groups. For each account, we have a technical working group. For example, water accounts, they have their own working group, which includes data providers from water, utilities, and data users, which include the Ministry of Agriculture. Yeah, I think in terms of the institutional structure, yeah, we have the steering committee and the technical working group. Thank you.
Thanks, Batusi. That's great, and it's wonderful to see indeed that water, energy, minerals, in addition to the macroeconomic indicators. I know we also attempted the satellite accounts for tourism, which are being run with the assistance of the World Tourism Organization, if I'm well informed, obviously with our Department of Tourism. But to respond to one of the questions is to say, can we also do, can we focus as well for some countries on the protected areas? I think it is shown in the chat box. And what about biodiversity? What about carbon? That's a very good point, actually. And before I hand over to Rafael to give us some experiences from his point, Uganda, for instance, I think Lucy's online here as well. They've done some biodiversity species accounts, which is quite interesting in and of itself. I mean, I would have never thought when we started 5 years ago that you can do an account for chimpanzees, or other countries have done some work on elephants. There's been a regional study on elephants. What is the value of an elephant, or through its lifetime, and you'll be amazed. And everybody thinks, well, the value of an elephant is in the ivory, and the poachers would agree with you. But the value of a live animal is infinitely bigger than the value of the tusks, because of tourism and other related activities, even ecosystem functions that can be related to elephants. It's really important. It's really interesting. Liberia, Sean, has done some work on carbon, which you also make reference to. You can do ecosystem mapping and accounting and single out what can be done in terms of carbon. And so has Kenya. There's some good examples of how we can use national capital accounting to single out carbon as an opportunity. So let me ask Rafa to go back a little bit in terms of the questions. When we were talking earlier about securing that political support, and I think it's so crucial for a lot of countries just to get off to a good start. Could you join and tell us a little bit more, Rafael, about the work that you're doing in either sort of Senegal or Nigeria? I know Eugene is on the call as well, so you may want to chip in, and maybe even DRC, which may not appear to be a country where it's like, well, are they going to go into national capital accounting? How far are they with their developments, and is there a conducive environment to do national capital accounting? Can you tell us what you think that conducive environment is for NCA, and how that got reflected in the work of the politicians that you work with in Globe?
Sorry, it sounds like. Thank you very much, Ruth. Can you hear or see me?
Yes,
Rafa,
we can
both.
see you
Yes.
and hear you both. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Great. Thank you very much for inviting me over. And I have to start by saying that I feel something in between very honored and quite embarrassed to be sharing this virtual panel with this senior specialist, because I'm going to be coming at the questions from a very different angle, which is the angle of a layman without a statistics background, who is nonetheless enamored with the discipline of environmental economic accounting since I first heard about it some 10 years ago. And someone who's been doing his best to promote it as a decision-making tool among parliamentarians for several years now. So as Ruth mentioned, I'm the Director of Programs of the Globe International Secretariat. And the Globe is a cross-party network of parliamentarians, which was founded in 1992, dedicated to promoting best legislative practice on environmental and climate governance.
Companies that make
so
up
at the moment,
85% of the market.
Sorry, Rafa.
There is, I'm having some echo.
Yeah. Either Mr. Ige or
Yeah.
Although, again, I think as already alluded to in the previous discussion.
I cannot hear myself.
You need to make sure you are being representative of all the spending. So Scala data would need to be supplemented with
what is happening?
I don't know.
Elsa, could you please mute that person?
Yes, I'm trying to identify. I mute one now. I hope everyone is negative. She's mute now. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
No problem.
Okay. Cheers.
So I was saying that at the moment, we are implementing a GEF6 project with UNEP as our implementing agency in the DRC, Nigeria, and Senegal, which is aimed at, inter alia, advancing the implementation of the CIA 2012 and the institutionalization of the use of environmental economic accounting and valuation data in decision making. So since we work with parliamentarians, the focus of the project as regards this aim has been to support the development of legislative roadmaps for environmental economic accounting prepared by national experts in consultation with national statistical offices and other national stakeholders. So when it comes to the question of securing political support in a conducive environment, I understand that the political support implied in the question is the support of national governments, that is the executive branch of government. And I suppose that being able to showcase policy applications linked to the delivery of environment-related SDGs or the climate and biodiversity objectives of the governments and other national priorities, and being able to present successful country case studies must be extremely important, and they need to be visually compelling, as the point that made by the Costa Rican minister. So for us, I mean, GLOBE has certainly needed to press those keys when making the case among parliamentarians. And I am pleased to say that by and large, regardless of the capacity of the country, the truth is that it is an easy sell with this constituency. I mean, it's a no-brainer if you're proposing such a flexible and effective tool for making the case for enhanced environmental governance. But environmentally aware parliamentarians fundamentally see the potential of environmental economic accounting data as tools for exerting parliamentary scrutiny on government actions. And this is an angle that is interesting for them greatly, because it can provide really compelling arguments to make the case for higher environmental integrity of public policy, and also to criticize government inaction or wrong actions. So legislators see that the policy objectives of natural capital accounting can include, well, to establish public accountability of the government, to inform national budgetary processes and macroeconomic decision making, and also inform environmental and natural resources policy development and decision making. However, I have to say that at present we are facing a really serious roadblock to capitalize on the political support for natural capital accounting that the project is generating. Because what parliamentarians want to know immediately is, okay, so where is this data? And who can I talk to in my country to get this information? Then one needs to explain that possibly there are not so much data available yet in their country, or perhaps that the raw data may not really tell the story. At least one that he or she would easily understand without some technical support to interpret this data and find the answer to the questions that he or she might be looking for. They are a bit disappointed, of course. This is when we remind them that the first thing that needs to happen is that the national statistical agencies receive support to make progress implementing the CIA according to national data needs and priorities, and that they as legislators have a critical role to play pushing for appropriate funding earmarked for the National Statistical Bureau to be able to do this. So this is a simple message, and this is also well understood. But then comes the problem. We are getting closer. We tell them that the real game changer is not just the generation of the data, but to ensure that the data are used as a decision-making tool by the government, by the executive when preparing development plans, for instance, and by legislators to exert the scrutiny and understand the implications of those policies. They agree, of course, and then they say, okay, so how do we do that? And this is when we find ourselves a bit short of answers. It's a pity, because there is enough political will already to go beyond supporting the implementation of the CIA, but we are struggling to provide examples of best practices, best legislative practices to institutionalize natural capital accounting as a policy tool. We always refer to an example that is already a bit old, from 2010, with the reform of Peru's Code of Environmental Impact Assessment. In essence, the code was amended to add the economic valuation of ecosystem services impacted in the scope of assessments. Of course, at the time when this law was amended, Peru did not dispose of very sophisticated data, but this amendment killed two birds with one stone. It institutionalized the use of the data on the one hand, but also it created a legal basis and in fact a demand for the generation of the data, because they are necessary for the implementation of the law. So in a study of the state of implementation of natural capital accounting that we published in 2014 in partnership with UCL, University College of London, we spotted a few more examples of adapting existing laws or policies concerning natural economic data and environmental statistics. For example, in Costa Rica, in Japan, and the United Kingdom. But we actually didn't find any examples in the African countries that we surveyed. Understandably, you people, I mean, the global natural capital community, the World Bank, UNEP, etc., you have been focusing on developing a great body of literature on practical policy applications. And this is very good, it's very helpful. But I really want to emphasize what a mistake it would be to focus all the attention on the executive and to see how policy applications coming through and not invest a little bit also in fighting for the institutionalization in parallel through legislation. Because in democratic countries, the governments come and go. And so political buy-in is easily lost. And we will find ourselves with our data serious gathering dust in the shelves. And we will need to start raising awareness and building buy-in with the new ministers and senior officials from scratch so that the data come to life again and are used. So our country representatives have been raiding the internet, looking for repositories of best legislative practices for natural capital accounting institutionalization. But apparently there is very little information out there. So we have asked Waves. I believe that, I'm not sure if we have got a response. I'm not directly involved in the process of preparing the country reports. On the whole, I would like to take this opportunity to invite all of you, in fact, to ask all of you to please come to us if you're aware of any laws having been passed or discussed in your country to lock in the use of natural capital accounting data for decision making, because these examples will add a lot of value to our conversation with legislators in Senegal and the DRC and Nigeria and other countries, because truly, once you explain to them what the tool is about, they are keen to do more to help you and to provide traction to this vision. So this is what I wanted to say.
Thanks, Rafael. That's great. I think you put it very well to say that working with people in high places, including MPs, is a continual engagement. They can also be a bit of a moving target, so it never stops. And I think I like your idea of institutionalization. I just want to comment on the fact that if we start with very practical examples and people see the benefit of it, a country like South Africa, for instance, has done extremely well in doing that very quietly, going about their business. They're doing very good work on ecosystem accounting. They're looking at the value of clean rivers versus other sort of biodiversity areas and how that can be incorporated. And they have embarked on setting up a national strategy for NCA. And the reason why I mention that is in some countries you would start with either a white paper or a policy, but the timing in South Africa is extremely opportune because they've generated that sort of critical mass to start going on, and it's shown how best you can do these type of things. And by setting up either a policy or a strategy which makes reference to the data requirements, the data protocols that are important, and some sort of guidelines or institutional. There could be legislation as well to make sure that we do these things on a regular basis. Now I know Cor is on the line, one of my country fellows, and I know from the Netherlands that they were going about cranking and doing their own business for a decade, if not more. But they worked on it, they set up the tools and the methodology, etc. They made sure the data protocols were in place. And now with new data, they can generate reports within a couple of weeks or months, and your accounts are available. So that institutionalization is very important, but we need to start with the buy-in and showing that it really works before we can further work that out into legislation. But your points are very well taken, and I see Sophia's hand is up. Sophia, do you want to respond to this?
Yes. Hi, Rafael. We haven't met. I'm Sophia Ahlroth with the WAVES program, nowadays part of a larger global program for sustainability at the World Bank. Thank you so much for this very interesting insights that you give. I'm not aware of the question that you say that you have posed to us, but and I'm sure that your team has gone through all the publications that we have on our website. As you know, we've really been trying to compile examples of policy uses, and we have several compendium from the NCA policy forum that we've done now since, I believe, 2016, and we've been doing a lot of other reports and briefs as well. But as you say, I think it's quite rare to find actual legislative examples. And just out of the top of my head, what I can come to think of are sort of smaller things that the accounts have impacted laws. So not a law that makes NCA used, but that they have impacted laws in terms of it could be how you do your environmental impact assessment, or like in the Philippines, how they allocate the different rights towards fisheries and things like that. But not actually a law that sort of generates demand.
That triggers, that triggers the demand. Yeah.
That triggers it. No, exactly. So that's the thing, and still we are very much focusing on how to showcase how you use the NCA for specific types of policies and laws around, let's say, environmental taxes or whatnot, but not that way that you are talking about. And I think this is extremely interesting. I will surely discuss with my colleagues to see, if they can come up with any examples of that. I doubt it a little bit. Yeah, but I will try.
Because there is very little, possibly, and needless to say, I mean, it's not that we haven't found the examples of policy applications useful. In essence, they can help inform protocols for scrutiny of parliamentarians. So when you realize that environmental economic accounting data have had an impact on legislation in certain countries, then you could well want to see what those data could do in your country and inquire whether the government is formulating policy with this in mind, if the data are available. So the parliament needs to generate a demand for the data, but this is on a ad hoc basis. So it's much more, it takes a lot more muscle to coordinate, and it really requires the presence on the ground of a few parliamentarians that are absolutely passionate about it and well supported. Whereas if we could institutionalize it, say, like just put it playing on autopilot, it would be a lot easier for them to be able to use the information. But your point is well taken. So I look forward to talking to you later on. Perhaps we can get something else.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks.
Thanks, Sophia, and so thanks, Rafa. I think what it shows to me is that there's no one linear route one can take to come to that conclusion of legislation or otherwise. I think you can work from the MPs backwards to say what is it that triggers their interest. Do they want to use it for scrutiny? Do they want to use it to really get a better destination of some of the areas in their part of the constituencies? And it shows to me that we really need to look at innovative ways to get this notion across. And Sean sent another message in the chat box just now, is to say, like, we need to monetize these accounts, and yes, we need to start originally with what I call flow, stocks and flows, or they can be extend and then condition accounts. But ultimately, yes, we do want to monetize, because it's it's the pounds and pennies, if you like, that makes people think. And there's absolutely no way where I think we haven't already created that critical mass to say we need to look at natural capital, you know, and monetize it, because it is something that makes us tick. And whenever I talk about these things, I keep on saying to people, you know, when we talk about natural capital accounts, we do not talk about money in the bank. We're talking about value, the value that allows you to take better decisions, to either go into legislation or scrutiny, or whether it's foreign direct investments or a better use of land. Land accounts are becoming quite popular. A lot of countries would like to start with land accounts, or linked to ecosystem, land uses, etc. We just see that this is a movement, if you like, that work in that particular direction. I've got two hands up. I think Sophia, we probably addressed yours, but I've got Rafi. Do you want to come in, Rafi?
Yeah, of course. This has been absolutely riveting. So just a little bit about myself. So I'm a chartered accountant, and I a technical director for the Climate Disclosure Standards Board. So we're one of the standard setters, one of the big five that help companies disclose such information, such as nature-related financial information, onto market. So then investors, as you had mentioned, Rod, ultimately have the necessary information to better understand potential risks and opportunities within their actual portfolios themselves. So there's a lot going on within this space, and historically I've just come from a global agri-commodity company where very much spearheading their work on natural capital accounting, so very much understand the real pressure points behind you know, putting a number on natural capital impacts, such as water, for example. You've got water scarcity issues, and they differ from region to region. And putting a number on these sort of data points really did provide my accounting colleagues with a very clear understanding of like the direction of travel, but ultimately what risk does that pose to their books, the financial books, the P&L and the balance sheet. With regards to what Raphael had mentioned around the importance of integrating this within policy, there's some really interesting work which has been completed recently by Unil Banerjee from the Inter-American Development Bank on really integrating environmental economic modelling to assess the economic and environmental impacts of conservation policies in Colombia. And it'll be really fascinating, if you haven't already, Raphael, to be connected into this sort of work and really piece together whether there are any synergies which could be made from an African perspective, and how that could be leveraged and possibly built out within, you know, some of the jurisdictions which you're working in. So really glad to be part of this this call, and would love to be contributing further calls going forward. But in the interim, if of interest, I'll share a current water guidance which we've prepared for preparers of accounts to actually go about reporting on natural capital financial related information. And thanks ever so much for allowing me to speak to you.
Thanks so much, Ravi. I think, yes, please do share. I've just typed O'Neill's name and the EM systems that he's running. Very fascinating work that O'Neill's doing. Quite complicated, not everybody's cup of soup, but fascinating. And we definitely need more of that. But it does bring about, you know, the sort of amount of information and data that you require to run these type of systems. But O'Neill's great, and he's been at some of the forums that Sophia made reference to. Great stuff, and very inspiring, and it's obviously the way to go.
Rod, I just had one final comment, and it was concerning a marketplace. So I've spent my last 4 years doing natural capital accounting, and one thing which came to mind as an accountant within this space is that marketplace. We need a marketplace. So there's quite a few companies already doing a lot of this information, and you look at the impact valuation roundtable or the Value Balancing Alliance. And these are like big companies operating, doing these sort of things. And what I would be really keen in looking into is companies are reporting upon this. Okay, maybe a small amount, but how can you get debt financing in on this? So, some sort of transition pathway on and helping companies transition to more natural capital friendly things. And you look at HSBC recently, they came out with their natural capital asset management, natural capital asset management. So maybe there's a conversation to be had with regards to, this sort of work and how, financing and working capital solutions can ultimately support a business on their natural capital glide path.
Right. Yeah, no, great stuff. Yes, there's the National Capitals Coalition, or the Capitals Coalition, that does some work with the private sector in this regard, Ravi, and you may be aware of them. They're based out of the UK. Mark Goff is running it, although they're also partly based out of the Netherlands, I believe. Good stuff, and I'm happy you used the word asset, because that's ultimately what we are talking about. And when we talk about companies, we're very clear to look at their their assets and their annual balances, and before we put any money in them, even if you wanted to invest in their companies and buy shares and stuff like that, we want to have a good look at how well they are equipped and how financially healthy they are. But when we go to the government and when we talk about nature, all of a sudden that asset is not there. It's either just a windfall. We don't keep accounts. We don't say, we withdraw even with our mineral accounts, and Batusi may want to comment on this. It's a bit of a sensitive issue, as you can imagine, with accounts. I mean, how many diamonds have we got in the ground? I mean, and if we start using them for good sustainable development purposes, there must be that balance, which we often lose in this. We never ask governments for their asset register and their asset balance, as it were. So I think that's a great point. I saw some hands up, and please also, Alessandra, do take the mic and tell us what's on your mind.
No, just quickly to react to what was said now, and the link between the business accounting and the NCA is that there is an initiative that trying to bring in together the national statistical offices and the businesses, and towards aligning the business accounting and reporting to the SEA. So there is, of course, work being done in the context of the EU and the EGAP, but I think it is important to get the standard setting companies, the standard setting agencies involved in this. So the work is going on. We are also doing some testing in basically trying to see, to bring together the statistical offices and companies to see how especially the ecosystem accounts can be used by companies to get information on the context in which they operate. I mean, the companies have information about the natural resources that they use and, what they are doing within their space. But I think that they find quite important to also understand the environment and the settings in which they operate. So we are testing this in India and in Spain, actually. So there is really an effort of trying to work closely together with between statistical offices and businesses. Also for statistical offices to be able to collect data and get the data that they need when they do their business surveys linked to the environmental issues. One other point about the O'Neill work and the EAM, just to say that we are also in the process of finalizing the guidelines on scenario modeling, which also include the work of EAM and the work on of Andrea Bassi that has done also with the World Bank in Indonesia. And these guidelines should become available quite soon. So we'll definitely make sure that these are distributed. And I mean, in the context of Africa, I would also like to mention that South Africa has done some quite some work on scenario analysis, and they're finalizing a report in that space. So we'll definitely share it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alessandra. That's great, and do share it in the WhatsApp group. I hope everybody is a member of, and if you're not yet, please do sign up, because we use it a lot to share information, and thanks also for some of the links that some people have posted in the Ravi as well, posted in the in the chat box. So that's great. I've got two hands up, but I just want to circle back to Peter Katanisa. Peter, what's our time frame? I'm happy to. This is a fascinating discussion, so I'm happy to carry on a little bit. I think we had initially said we would do it for about an hour and a half, so I don't want to. We obviously in the Q&A session, but Peter, what's our time frame?
Oh Lord, our time is not our best friend now, but I think we are almost there. We are almost up to time, but we can maybe reserve 10 more minutes and then we wrap up.
Fantastic. Okay, let's do that. Jackie, do you want to come in?
Hey, thanks, Ruud, and great session, absolutely fantastic. So I wanted to pick up on what Alessandro was saying, because in the last few years since I left the UN, I've been working on the ground, really trying to build real life applications of this. And so using ahead of time sort of scenario guidelines, been working Australia, Kenya, Costa Rica, a few other places for real. I mean, literally trying to do this for real. With, for example, in Australia with the National Bank, they have a big fund given to them under the climate, and it's asking investors now how they can invest their money in a way which is going to be minimizing risk in anticipation of climate change. And they have decided then to use the accounting structure to do this. Now, why is that good? It's because they want to be able to come right down to individual farms. And to do that, of course, we have to integrate the satellite data and so on. So we've managed to get to a point now where we've got a dynamical model for the scenarios, building off a natural capital, social capital, a whole kind of capital structure, backfill using satellite data, in situ and ground data. And what is really great in this pipeline of data, you can begin to get the disaggregation going extremely well. I mean, we're within about 90% between the model and the real data, which I think for soil, biodiversity, water, carbon is really great. But what I wanted to say is that having got to the point of creating the model, it's called Eco Balance, we went out to the market. And I tell you, I was absolutely stunned, because just in 1 week in Australia alone, we got $5 million of impact investors turning up at the door. And so what I think right now is we need to kind of connect this work, not just to the statistics offices, but to real world situations. And there's an appetite for it because, as you know, many countries are now talking about ecosystem payment for ecosystems and so on. And there isn't really a solid framework. But when you say to them, oh, this is built on the system of economic accounting and so on, they feel confident. They feel that there's an underpinning. And of course, the challenge is that the statisticians don't feel confident. But I just wanted to tell you about that, because I think we could really now reach out on the basis of this fundamental framework, which the world is coming around, and start to attract big investment to sort of turn the tide on. Yes, we seem to be a little bit of a niche group. I think it was Raphael saying that, and make us mainstream. I mean, I think this is really the point. We've got something to sell now, and I think we can really take it up to the next level. So yes, it's very exciting. As you can tell, I'm always very excited.
No, that's great. Thanks, Jackie. That's a wonderful example. And to me, what it shows is that there's so many applications, and some of them, you just never thought about it. They come from left center, and you think like, oh wow, I never thought it was anything that would be of an interest to impact investments. Of course, when you explain it, so yeah, clear, obviously clear that there's interests lie there as well. And great example. And yeah, I'd like to know a bit more about it. If you can share it either in the WhatsApp group, if you can share a link on the EcoBalance model, I think a lot of us would like to read up a bit more about it. I've got three hands up. And thanks so much, Jackie. I've got three hands up. I know Christopher was first with the hand. Chris, do you want to carry on?
Yes, good evening, everyone from Uganda. Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Chris. Yes, good evening.
Yes, good evening from Uganda. How are you?
Good.
Yes, I'm Christopher. I work with Uganda Bureau of Statistics, and we've been working on NCA for quite some time. We started actually at the same time with Kenya. Mine is small. I wanted to respond to Raphael's concern when he was concerned about the buying from the political side and the rest. I was wondering, usually for us Uganda, what we've done, we brought in these accounts, we bring them as solutions. How? We focus on what solutions these accounts can bring in terms of the development plans, especially like SDGs. Right now in Uganda, we are running the National Development Plan 3. So if you bring them as solutions, it becomes easier to be bought in by the politicians. Then also the other thing as statistics, Uganda, what we've done, basically most of these accounts are looking at different thematic areas, let's say environment, tourism, and everything. So we make like, let's say the Minister of Tourism spearhead like the development of the accounts. For us, we develop them, but for them, the issue of administration and buying in, the institutions themselves are the ones who spearhead that initiative. So yeah, I think I wanted to share a little bit on that.
No, thanks. That's a great example. And Chris, Uganda is one of the countries that we are so proud of having been part for with the GSA membership already going back about 5-6 years. You're doing excellent work at the moment, and yeah, happy that that's going on, and institutionalization going on very well in Uganda. Before I circle back to the panelists, I know Christine has got her hand up. Christine, I just want to give the floor very shortly to Innocent, and from there, just for everyone to know, I just want to circle back to Christine, Batusi, and Raphael to give us their parting shots before I hand back to Peter, as I wouldn't want to lose too many people. We're still okay. We went from 75 to 60, so we're okay. But I do want to make sure that I can also give the floor to Innocent. Please go ahead, Innocent.
Thank you very much, Rude, and thank you very much, everyone on the panelists. My name is Innocent Honor. I work for the African Development Bank as climate change and green growth expert. So so far it's been very interesting conversations. I joined the meeting very late. My apologies. But from the little I was able to listen to, particularly the last presentation by Jackie on the eco-balance model, I just wanted to also share perhaps what the African Development Bank is doing around mainstreaming climate change. And just to piggyback on Jackie a little bit, the conversation within the bank has moved to practical applications. As I speak, the bank is partnering with the Green Growth Knowledge Partnership to implement a project that will mainstream natural capital in African development finance. And they are picking Nigeria as one of the countries which they would like to run this project. Why? Because of some of the ongoing activities that Globe is doing, for example. Rafa was my former colleague, and I worked very closely with him on some of the work that he presented today. So I'm trying to push the bank to also do some work around integrating natural capital in Africa infrastructure finance. So the whole discussions about accounting for natural capital, the bank is seeing how this can actually translate into accounting for financing that will support infrastructure. If natural capital can be accounted for, how does it create value for Africa infrastructure? We're also looking at how to develop business case for natural capital in development finance institutions. So beyond at the African Development Bank, we're also looking at other financial institutions within Africa like the AFC. We are trying to see if we could, by implementing this project in Nigeria and a few other countries, be able to create or establish some collaborations with other African financial institutions to begin to apply these tools already. So if the eco-balance model, although being specific for Australia, we could also look at how it can be applied in maybe in some sectors within Nigeria. So it's been very interesting for me, particularly to know more about the eco-balance model. And for the other presentations I've missed, I hope to be able to catch up and also to make meaningful contributions both on this platform and also on the NCA group that Rude is leading. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Innocent. That's great and wonderful to have you join us. Yes, African Development Bank is a very important partner on the African continent. So let's see, Innocent. Happy to discuss a bit more and see how we can work together, within this community of practice, but also maybe within the context of the Gaborone Declaration for Sustainability in Africa, and we'll see how we can catch up between our two institutions. I'd like to hand over to Christine, and from there I'll ask Batusi if she wants to say something in addition, and then from there Rafa before we then wind up. Christine?
Thanks, Rod. Actually, I've just been taking a few points as we've been going along. So I thought I'd add a few points based on the discussion that has been had. I'll start with Jackie. She raised a very exciting point about the eco balances. And I just wanted to say that sometimes what happens in countries is there are so many efforts from so many different areas. And sometimes you don't know when efforts are being duplicated. So as much as we are working in these different countries with different approaches, it is important to have it coordinated at one point. And now that we have the CR standard, use the CR standard and have it coordinated. For example, in Kenya, it will be coordinated under the National Statistics Office, so that all these efforts can still be used for the organization's needs that's carrying out the efforts, but it could also be used by the country to maybe come up with the accounts or assist them in building up this account. The other point I wanted to make was with Christopher, and I wanted to agree with him that building political support is going to be done gradually. It's a gradual thing. And especially now that we have indicators all the way from SDGs to climate change, and these indicators are very well informed by this account. So as more and more demand is coming for SDG indicators and climate change, then more and more light will shine on environmental accounts. And this will be gradual, but I'm sure we'll eventually get there. And finally, I just wanted to say something about what Batusi said. She mentioned that different departments and ministries come up with different accounts. I just wanted to highlight to the participants that there's also another way of doing things. Like here in Kenya, we have a central coordination role with the National Statistics Office. So all the accounts are done in collaboration with the different ministries and departments, but they are all done and housed under the National Statistics Office. And it's also important to have, like a database of exactly what you're doing, so that somebody can go to the website and see exactly this is where we are, this is where we want to go, and like that. Finally, I just want to encourage participants to get started, like you mentioned in the beginning. It sounds sometimes SIA accounts can sound a bit much if you have not gotten started. But the best thing is to start. Like now, we publish our energy account on an annual basis. It's been part now of the system, and it's now being done. So just get started, and once you get started, the data requests that you get from different institutions, once the request comes, send them to the published account, and then you build demand slowly for your account. Thank you, Rod, and thank you, everyone.
Good, excellent. Good points, Christine, on the coordination, and also good point on there's so much out there that sometimes we forget that what is available to us. And I guess the very reason why we set up the community of practice with the original sort of founding members stroke host organizations was exactly for this reason, because there is so much out there. You've got the practitioners, the policymakers, and they all have different kind of analyses or data needs, but and models and whatever they would like to use. So the community of practice is exactly for that, and we hope to keep on sharing that information. And for all of you who want to become members, I saw it in the chat box. Do send a message to Peter, and he will get you signed up to the WhatsApp group, and makes reference to the website, which is kindly hosted by UNECA. And let's do more of this. Batusi, you want to say something to wrap up, or some interesting points that you've picked up this afternoon?
Thank you very much, Ruth, and thank you very much for the fruitful discussions. We have learned a lot from this webinar. Just to indicate that as Botswana, we have also done significant progress in terms of using our accounts to inform policy. I'll give an example of the water accounts. They use the water that is generated by the water accounts to monitor SDG 6. And the energy accounts, they also use their accounts to inform the existing strategies in their department, for example, the energy efficiency strategy. And the macroeconomic indicators, we have recently recommended the revision of the fiscal rule. And I'd also like to emphasize that it is key to focus more on policy application so that we can get the high level buy-in. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thanks for those examples, but to see very, very encouraging to see that there is that link to the SDGs, but also your example of energy efficiency and the standards around that. Very important work. Raphael, would you want to share your last thoughts with us?
Are we sticking to the original concept of talking about legal and institutional arrangements, or?
Yeah, and anything that comes to mind on the basis of the discussion this afternoon that you want to share with us?
Yes. Okay. So going back to the issue of how to ensure effective collaboration and agency support, and in particular the cooperation, the interagency cooperation for the implementation of accounts. Well, at the 2014 study of Globe and UCL, we did realize that responses were needed to address the lack of vertical coordination between national and subnational levels of government as well, lack of horizontal and cross-sectoral coordination between different government agencies, lack of clear allocation of responsibility, lack of transparency and information sharing, etc., and stakeholder engagement. We looked at how the 21 countries in the study were addressing these issues, trying to address these challenges, and we saw that one size didn't really fit all. So when it comes to the institutional reforms that can establish the basis for natural capital accounting, we saw that in some countries they had established a new government agency. This is, for example, what France and the United Kingdom decided to do. Others decided to allocate responsibility to a single institution, to a National Statistical Office, to the Cabinet Office, and this is what Ghana and Japan were doing at the time. Or they could distribute responsibility among different institutions. Most countries we surveyed had opted for this option. So they had, we saw this was the case in Botswana, in Cameroon, in Canada, Colombia, Costa Rica, Guatemala, India, Mexico, Nigeria, most of them really, including the United Kingdom. Or perhaps they could have chosen to devolve responsibility to subnational institutions like the state or provincial governments. And we saw a few examples of this as well. So the conclusion is that the optimal arrangement is going to depend on the institutional setup and the administrative and the political culture of the country. So our study tried to compile a few examples of each of these different arrangements to provide a range of best practices.
Great, no, wonderful, and actually, I'm very happy you made that comment, because it really is something that we've experienced with the GDSA, and a bit of a takeaway from my point, supporting Christine earlier on to say, let's start somewhere. You know, Kwame is on the line. He's from Ghana, the Environmental Protection Agency, and they're doing national capital accounting. And my point made earlier is, like, it doesn't really matter at the moment where you sit within the government. There's no perfect place. There's no perfect start. The only thing we know is that if there is a host in your government, and start somewhere and just do it. And from there it will grow. Once you get that interest slowly moving, you know, more people will come on board. They will see the relevance of the work that we're doing. Look at where we were 10 years ago on this, and now we're talking about very sophisticated models to people who have examples of how it has informed policy. We've come a long way, and this is not going to go away. It's only going to grow. And I think with all the enthusiasm that I see from the various people on the call, and the ones we work with on a daily basis, you know, this is encouraging, and we hope to have more of these discussions and these wonderful and great takeaways of opinions and examples. Peter, I'm going to hand back to you to you know, wind up and give us your last thoughts. It was been an absolute pleasure. I must say it's been one of the most fascinating webinars that I've been part of. It was a wonderful discussion. Thanks everyone for your contributions. And Peter, back to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lud. I can't thank you much as the chair of this discussion. It has been, you've raised the bar in terms of the next chairman to chair these webinars and other discussions that we'll be having as the community of practice. And I would like to really to thank the panelists, Marco and Rosemary, for good presentation and discussions. I think this, as Lud, you're rightly saying, it has been one of the most interactive, going away from the discussion to the chat room. We've seen different participants coming in, having a lot of questions, having a lot of responding to questions. And I think this is a very, very it has been a very interactive and productive discussion. Just to make sure that we don't lose the focus and we don't lose the opportunity that we've had here of sharing all what we have in terms of taking forward the natural capital accounting work across Africa. I want to inform the participants that the recordings, the presentations and the materials and even the links that have been shared, I will be sharing with you within the next 2 to 3 days after today. So please join the WhatsApp group. We've shared, Sophia has been sharing where you can contact me so that I can be able to add you on the WhatsApp group, but also the website. So let's take discussion and this conversation further through our communication platforms that we have on the WhatsApp group and on the website. So just to make sure that the key takeaways that have come out of this discussion, one is on what Rosemary tackled on touched on in the beginning. It's very important that we have an approach and a process where he talked about the core working group for countries. If this core working group made up of the sponsors, producers, and users of the NCA information, this can lead to sustainability and the continuation of the NCA work within the respective countries. And that's very important that we keep this conversation and discussion going under the core working group. It can be made up of a high-level technical group of senior government officials, and also technical working groups of technicians like statisticians, environmentalists, and ecologists working together to make this work going forward. And I think Raphael also touched on the legal and institutional arrangement that can be streamlined within the respective countries. Of course, being mindful of the country contexts which are different in each respective country. So it's very important that we look into this in terms of some countries, they don't need maybe the legal document or legal documents and legal policies, but some might just need change makers within the countries to kickstart the process. Then another important point which was made is on communication. How can we simplify communication and advocacy so that members, countries, members, and stakeholders can be able to understand the outcomes of the findings in the space of natural capital accounting. They went ahead to mention using infographics and maps to communicate the findings so that even a layman person can understand, a layperson can understand the findings and the results and how it can impact businesses, policymakers, and national planners. So I think a lot of other points have been discussed, and Christine, Batusi, and Raphael have touched on all of the points that have been made. So we really want to thank you. This discussion, we've gone way beyond the time, but I think every moment, every time, every second has counted, and we thank you all, and we wish you to continue following up on the NCA work, and please join the community of practice in all the platforms that we have, and we will continue to work with you to make sure that NCA can continue to inform policies and national planning across Africa. Thank you so much, and I wish you a good afternoon and maybe a morning to those who are not within the African continent. Thank you all, and wish you to a nice stay, and we catch up soon on other webinars and other platforms and other work that we're working together. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you, Peter. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you,
Wonderful.
Ruth.
Cheers. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.